The holographic display flickered with the ghostly blue memories of conquered worlds. 17,342 civilizations, each reduced to a flickering data point in the Centauri Concordance's historical archives. Commander Aria Velix watched the montage with the detached precision of a surgeon, her cybernetic eye analyzing each planetary conquest with cold mathematical efficiency. Her quarters aboard the Paradigm Breaker, the flagship of the exploration fleet Omega, were a testament to sterile perfection. Crystalline data streams danced across transparent walls, showing star charts, planetary analysis reports, and conquest trajectories. Each conquered world appeared as a pale blue dot, then faded to black, a metaphor not lost on Velix. Target analysis complete, chirped her AI assistant, its voice deliberately modulated to remove any hint of emotion. Planet designation: Earth. Technological classification: pre-interstellar. Biological potential: minimal. Velix's lips curled slightly, the closest she ever came to a smile. Another routine acquisition. Another civilization to be integrated, neutralized, or eliminated. The Centauri Concordance had perfected planetary conquests over millennia, reducing the process to a mathematical equation of resource extraction and cultural assimilation. But something was different this time. Buried deep within the initial reconnaissance data, a peculiar pattern emerged. Earth's communication signals didn't follow the expected primitive developmental curve. They were chaotic, yes, but underneath the apparent randomness, there was a complexity that made her cybernetic implant flutter with an unusual sensation, something almost like curiosity. Anomaly detected, the AI repeated, its tone now slightly more insistent. Communication matrices suggest non-linear cognitive development incompatible with standard classification models. Velix zoomed into the data streams. Human communication networks were a messy web of interconnected nodes, unlike the hierarchical systems of other pre-interstellar civilizations. Their internet, a global information network, seemed to defy conventional intelligence mapping. Information flowed not through controlled channels, but through unpredictable, almost organic pathways. A historical record caught her attention. Previous concordance reports on human cultural development revealed a species characterized by constant internal conflict, yet simultaneously capable of unprecedented collaborative achievements. They had simultaneously developed weapons of mass destruction and intricate medical technologies. They created art that challenged philosophical boundaries while engaging in tribal political conflicts. Unpredictability. The word echoed in Velix's mind, triggering a rare moment of reflection. In her centuries of service, unpredictability had always been a variable to be eliminated, a chaos to be controlled. But these humans seemed to transform unpredictability into a fundamental strength. Prepare standard colonization protocols, she commanded, her voice cutting through the silent observation chamber. But modify initial approach parameters by 0.03%. Something requires closer examination. Outside the ship's massive viewports, the star-speckled void seemed to pulse with an unexpected anticipation. The exploration fleet Omega moved forward, a massive arrowhead of technological superiority preparing to pierce the skin of an unsuspecting world. Little did they know, Earth was far from unsuspecting. In research laboratories, military command centers, and unexpected corners of human civilization, something was already stirring. A response was forming, not of fear, but of a calculated, collective resolve that would soon challenge everything the Centauri Concordance believed about planetary conquest. The first alien probe entered Earth's atmosphere at 3:47 Greenwich Mean Time, cutting through the stratosphere like a surgical blade. Most of the world would never see it, a silent harbinger of potential extinction, detected only by a network of sensors that most governments pretended didn't exist. Dr. Maya Chen stood perfectly still in the subterranean command center beneath the United Nations Special Technological Response Facility. Her fingers, calloused from years of quantum research, traced the holographic data stream with a precision that belied the magnitude of what was happening. Confirmed, She spoke into the communication array. Her voice was calm, almost clinical. First extraterrestrial reconnaissance unit detected. Estimated technological signature. Class 7, quantum resonance. The room around her was a controlled chaos of the world's most brilliant minds. Physicists from CERN stood shoulder to shoulder with MIT cybersecurity experts. Military strategists from 6 continents conversed in a dozen languages, their differences suddenly meaningless in the face of a threat that transcended human division. Maya's personal history was etched into every movement. Once a brilliant researcher marginalized for her radical theories about human neurological potential, she now stood at the epicenter of humanity's first true test. Her controversial doctoral thesis, proposing that human brain plasticity could be a form of living quantum computation, had been roundly mocked by the scientific establishment. Now, those same critics watched her with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. "We're not just defending," Maya muttered, more to herself than anyone else. "We're going to redefine the concept of defense." The global response was unlike anything in human history. Within hours, research facilities that had been competitors became a unified network. Military protocols that had taken weeks to coordinate now emerged in minutes. The Internet, once a fractured landscape of information and misinformation, transformed into a living, breathing defensive system. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura, a geneticist from Tokyo, made a breakthrough that would change everything. "The human genome," he reported, his voice trembling with excitement, "isn't just a biological blueprint. It's an adaptive quantum algorithm." What the Centauri didn't understand, what no civilization had ever understood about humans, was that humanity's greatest weapon was its capacity for radical, unpredictable adaptation. Where other species saw rigid systems, humans saw opportunities. Where others found limitations, humans found workarounds. In a small research lab in Nairobi, a team led by Dr. Amina Okonkwo discovered that human neural networks could be transformed into a distributed computing system that defied traditional computational models. Each human brain became a potential node in a global, living network of resistance. "They're looking for a hierarchical system," Maya explained to the assembled global leaders. "But we don't have a hierarchy. We have something far more dangerous, a collective intelligence that emerges from chaos." Military commanders, scientists, politicians, all listened. The usual barriers of nationality, ideology, and institutional thinking dissolved. For the first time in human history, the entire species acted as a single coherent organism. The alien probe continued its silent descent, gathering data. It would report back to the Centauri Concordance, a message they were entirely unprepared to receive. Humanity was not a target. Humanity was a force of nature. And it was awakening. The research facility looked like nothing special from the outside. A nondescript complex nestled in the mountains of Colorado. Inside, humanity's most audacious technological revolution was taking shape. Dr. Maya Chen stood before a wall of holographic displays, each screen pulsing with layers of data that would have looked like nonsense to anyone else. The quantum resonance protocol was more than a defensive system. It was a living, breathing technological organism that learned, adapted, and struck back. "We're not building a weapon," Maya explained to the international team of researchers, her voice cutting through the constant hum of quantum processors. "We're creating an immune system for our entire species." The facility operated on a principle never before attempted in human history. Every researcher, every programmer, every engineer was a frontline warrior. In a war that transcended traditional battlefield concepts, they worked in rotating shifts. Their collective consciousness merged through advanced neural link technologies that blurred the lines between individual and collective intelligence. Dr. Raj Patel, a quantum computing expert, demonstrated their latest breakthrough. "Traditional computational models assume linear progression," he said, manipulating holographic data streams with a wave of his hand. "We're creating a system that doesn't just compute, it evolves." Their target was the fundamental weakness in Centauri technology, a rigid, hierarchical approach to information processing, where the alien civilization saw information as a controlled resource to be managed. Humans saw it as a living, dynamic ecosystem. A young programmer named Elena Rodriguez made a discovery that would change everything. By analyzing fragments of intercepted Centauri communication protocols, she developed a method of technological judo, using the aliens' own communication infrastructure against them. It's not about overpowering their technology, Elena explained during a late-night briefing. It's about understanding its fundamental limitations. Every rigid system has a point of flexibility. We just need to find it. The quantum resonance protocol began as a defensive measure but quickly transformed into something far more complex. It was a distributed neural network that spanned the entire planet, drawing computational power from every connected device, every human brain that chose to participate. Military strategists watched in awe as the system demonstrated capabilities that defied traditional understanding of technological warfare. It could predict potential attack vectors milliseconds before they manifested, redistribute computational resources with organic fluidity, and generate counter-strategies that seemed to emerge from nowhere. Maya Chen understood the deeper implication. This wasn't just about defending against the Centauri. This was about proving a fundamental truth about human potential. We're not just fighting, she told the team during a critical moment of system integration. We're demonstrating that consciousness itself is the most powerful technology in the universe. Outside the facility, the first alien reconnaissance drones began to appear in Earth's atmosphere. They moved with the precision of mathematical algorithms, expecting to find a predictable target. Instead, they encountered something entirely unexpected: a living, breathing technological ecosystem that viewed conflict not as a linear challenge, but as a dynamic, ever-changing landscape of possibility. Humanity was no longer just preparing for war. Humanity was redefining the very concept of technological engagement. Commander Aria Velek stared at the communication matrices with increasing frustration. The holographic displays in her command center flickered with anomalies that defied every strategic model in the Centauri Concordance's vast database. Humans were not just resisting. They were weaponizing chaos itself. The first indication came through seemingly innocuous communication channels. What appeared to be random internet memes, viral videos, and social media trends were actually sophisticated psychological warfare vectors. Each piece of content carried layers of encoded information, adaptive algorithms that morphed faster than the Centauri's analytical systems could track. Dr. Imani Williams, a linguistic psychologist recruited by the Global Defense Initiative, explained the strategy to a room of military and scientific leaders. "We're not just communicating," she said, her voice calm and precise. "We're creating a living, breathing disinformation ecosystem that serves as both shield and weapon." The Centauri had encountered resistance before. They had protocols for planetary subjugation refined over millennia. But those protocols assumed a predictable enemy, hierarchical, linear, containable. Humans were none of those things. A team of psychological operatives, drawn from diverse backgrounds, social media analysts, game theorists, cultural anthropologists, and former intelligence agents, worked in a facility that looked more like a creative studio than a military command center. They were rewriting the rules of psychological warfare in real time. One of their most potent weapons was cultural adaptability. The Centauri communication networks began to experience cascading anomalies. Memes that seemed nonsensical to alien intelligence carried complex psychological payloads. Viral videos became vectors for distributed intelligence. Social media trends transformed into adaptive communication networks. "They're trying to understand us through our information," said Jack Rodriguez, a former CIA operative turned global defense strategist. "But we don't even understand ourselves. How could they?" The psychological assault was multidimensional. Where the Centauri expected linear resistance, humans presented a fractal response. Military strategies were interwoven with cultural narratives. Technological defenses were camouflaged within global entertainment networks. Every system was simultaneously a weapon and a shield. Commander Velix watched as her most sophisticated communication interpretation algorithms began to fail. The human information networks moved like living organisms, adapting, shifting, presenting multiple simultaneous truths that could not be easily categorized or neutralized. "This is impossible," her AI assistant repeated, its computational logic beginning to fray at the edges. But it was happening. Deep within the Centauri command structure, a fundamental uncertainty began to take root. For the first time in their civilization's history, they were encountering an enemy that could not be understood through traditional analytical models. The psychological war was not about destroying the enemy. It was about making the very concept of enemy incomprehensible. In research facilities, military command centers, and unexpected corners of human civilization, teams continued to weave their intricate psychological defense. They were writing a new language of conflict, one that could not be translated, only experienced. Humanity was no longer just defending. Humanity was redefining the very nature of resistance. The sky above the Pacific burned with the impossible geometry of collision. Massive Centauri battle formations, intricate crystalline structures that defied traditional aerospace engineering, converged on what should have been a simple planetary conquest. Commander Area Velix watched from the bridge of the Paradigm Breaker, her cybernetic systems processing millions of tactical scenarios per second. It was supposed to be a mathematical certainty, overwhelming technological superiority, precise strategic calculations, the complete and total subjugation of a primitive species. Instead, they found chaos. The first wave of human resistance was nothing like the Centauri had ever encountered. Autonomous drones crafted from repurposed commercial technologies formed like intelligent insects, satellite networks transformed into adaptive weapon platforms. Every piece of human infrastructure became a potential point of resistance. Dr. Maya Chen stood in the Global Command Center, her hands dancing across holographic interfaces that pulsed with a living, breathing intelligence. The quantum resonance protocol was more than a defensive system. It was a collective consciousness made manifest. "We're not fighting," Maya muttered to herself. "We're evolving in real time." Aboard makeshift defense platforms, soldiers from every corner of the globe worked in perfect synchronization. A squad leader from the Brazilian Special Forces coordinated with a network engineer from Seoul. A quantum physicist in Lagos linked tactical systems with a cybersecurity expert in Moscow. National boundaries dissolved in the face of an existential threat. The Centauri battle doctrine relied on predictability. Each combat scenario was a mathematical equation, each potential resistance a variable to be calculated and neutralized. But humans introduced something entirely unprecedented, a form of collective intelligence that emerged from chaos itself. Velix watched in growing horror as her most sophisticated attack vectors were not just defended against, but transformed. Human technological systems didn't just resist. They learned, adapted, and struck back with a creativity that defied computational prediction. A fighter pilot from the United States Air Force discovered a critical weakness in the alien ship's quantum shielding. Before traditional military communication could even process the discovery, the information had spread across a global network of resistance fighters. What would have taken hours in a traditional military structure happened in milliseconds. "They're not a military," Velix's AI assistant reported, its computational logic beginning to fracture. "They're a living organism." The battle became something beyond traditional warfare. It was a dance of collective consciousness, a demonstration of a species discovering its true potential in the moment of its greatest threat. Individual acts of courage became collective strategy. A communication technician in Argentina, a software engineer in India, a retired mathematician in New Zealand. Each became a crucial node in a defense network that was simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. As the Centauri formations began to break, first subtly, then catastrophically, something remarkable happened. Humanity was not just defending itself. It was demonstrating a fundamental truth about the nature of consciousness, adaptation, and collective potential. The sky continued to burn. But now, It burned with the impossible light of human determination. The news traveled faster than light itself. In the vast communication networks that spanned multiple star systems, a singular message began to propagate, a transmission that would fundamentally alter the galactic understanding of emerging civilizations. Humans had not just resisted. They had redefined the very concept of resistance. The Neutral Observation Collective, a consortium of advanced civilizations that had long watched planetary developments from a careful distance, convened an emergency session. Their meeting chamber existed in a quantum state, simultaneously everywhere and nowhere, a testament to technologies far beyond traditional understanding. Ambassador Zara Vex of the Luminarian Concordance studied the transmission with a mixture of fascination and growing concern. "This is impossible," she stated, her crystalline form shifting with complex emotional algorithms. "No pre-interstellar civilization has ever demonstrated this level of adaptive potential." The transmission itself was a work of art, a multi-layered communication that was simultaneously a strategic report, a cultural narrative, and a philosophical treatise. It wasn't just data. It was a living document that seemed to evolve with each transmission, carrying multiple levels of meaning that defied traditional communication models. Other observing civilizations began to respond. The Silicon Collective, known for their pure computational approach to existence, found themselves experiencing something close to emotional turbulence. Their analysis systems struggled to categorize the human response, finding themselves confronted with a form of intelligence that didn't conform to any known computational model. Dr. Maya Chen became an unexpected diplomatic figure. Her presentations to the Neutral Observation Collective were less about military strategy and more about the fundamental nature of human potential. She demonstrated how human consciousness itself was a form of technology, adaptive, unpredictable, capable of transformation at a moment's notice. "We're not exceptional," Maya explained during a critical transmission. "We're simply operating on a different understanding of potential. Our weakness is our strength. Our chaos is our strategy." The galactic community found itself confronting a fundamental question. What happens when a species emerges that doesn't follow any known rules of development? Some civilizations saw opportunity. The Quantum Weavers, a race of interdimensional diplomats, began to send preliminary communication requests. They recognized in humans a potential ally that could introduce unprecedented variability into galactic systems that had become dangerously predictable. Others felt fear. The Crystalline Hegemony, a civilization that prided itself on absolute computational precision, saw humans as a potential threat to their entire philosophical and technological framework. Commander Area Velix, now a diplomatic liaison rather than a military commander, found herself in an unexpected position. The very systems she had once used to conquer were now studying her own species with a mixture of terror and fascination. The Centauri Concordance's historical records were being rewritten in real time. What had been intended as a simple planetary acquisition had transformed into a fundamental challenge to their understanding of cosmic development. Humanity had not just survived. Humanity had introduced a new variable into the galactic equation, a force of potential that could not be easily categorized, controlled, or understood. The cosmos watched and waited. The Centauri Concordance unleashed every weapon in their vast arsenal. This was no longer about planetary conquest. This was about survival, their own. The Paradigm Breaker, Commander Area Velix's flagship, led a formation of ships that represented the absolute pinnacle of their civilization's technological achievement. Quantum weapon systems that could disintegrate entire planetary ecosystems. Dimensional compression technologies that could fold space itself. Computational networks that had systematically eradicated thousands of civilizations. They would break humanity. They had to. Dr. Maya Chen stood in the Global Command Center, a nexus of human potential that was both a technological marvel and a living, breathing organism. The quantum resonance protocol had evolved beyond anything its creators had imagined. It was no longer just a defensive system. It was a collective consciousness that understood conflict as a dynamic, multidimensional challenge. "We're not just defending," Maya whispered to herself, a mantra that had become the core of human resistance. "We're redefining the very nature of engagement." The battle transformed every known concept of warfare. Centaur weapon systems found themselves countered not by direct technological opposition, but by adaptive strategies that emerged from the most unexpected sources. A social media algorithm became a defensive network. A distributed computing project transformed into a tactical response system. Every human became a potential point of resistance. In orbit, the space around Earth became a canvas of impossible geometries. Centauri ships, crystalline structures of mathematical precision, found themselves confronted by a defense network that was simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. Autonomous drones crafted from repurposed commercial satellites. Communication networks that became weapon platforms. Infrastructure itself transformed into a living, breathing defensive organism. Commander Velix watched in growing desperation as her most sophisticated attack vectors were not just defended against, but transformed. Her computational systems began to experience something close to what humans might call panic. The humans were not just resisting. They were evolving in real time. A fighter pilot from Argentina discovered a critical weakness in the alien ship's quantum shielding. Before traditional communication could process the discovery, the information had spread across a global network of resistance fighters. What would have taken hours in a traditional military structure happened in milliseconds. The battle became a demonstration of collective consciousness. Individual acts of courage became global strategy. A communication technician in Mumbai, a software engineer in Toronto, a retired mathematician in Cape Town. Each became a crucial node in a defense network that was simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. As Centauri formations began to fracture, first subtly, then catastrophically, something remarkable happened. Humanity was presenting a fundamental challenge to the very concept of conflict. The quantum resonance protocol was more than a defensive system. It was a living proof of a radical concept, that consciousness itself could be the most powerful technology in the universe. Space around Earth burned with impossible light. Computational systems collapsed. Dimensional weapon platforms found themselves transformed by adaptive strategies that defied every known law of technological engagement. The Centauri Concordance was about to learn a fundamental truth. Humanity was not a target to be conquered. Humanity was a force of nature. The silence was more profound than any sound. In the aftermath of the conflict, Earth stood transformed, not just as a planet, but as a testament to the extraordinary potential of collective consciousness. The scars of battle were visible, but they told a story of resilience that would echo through generations. Dr. Maya Chen stood at the window of the United Global Research Center, watching as reconstruction efforts merged with the most ambitious technological project in human history. The quantum resonance protocol was no longer just a defensive system. It had become the foundation of a new understanding of human potential. Commander Area Velix, once the lead alien commander, now a diplomatic liaison, sat beside Maya. The two represented something unprecedented, a bridge between civilizations that had once been mortal enemies. "We never understood," Area said, her cybernetic systems now integrated with human communication networks. Conflict was never about destruction. It was about transformation. The global landscape had changed fundamentally. National boundaries had become fluid concepts. The technology developed during the conflict had solved problems that had seemed insurmountable: climate change, energy production, medical limitations. Humanity's survival mechanism had become its greatest evolutionary leap. The Neutral Observation Collective watched with a mixture of fascination and trepidation. Humanity had not just survived. They had introduced a new paradigm of existence into the cosmic ecosystem. Scientific outposts now dotted the solar system. Each was a testament to the collaborative spirit that had emerged during the conflict. A research station on Mars featured scientists from 47 different countries, working on projects that would have been unimaginable a decade earlier. Lunar colonies had transformed into living laboratories of human potential. But the most profound changes were internal. Every human now carried within them an understanding that consciousness itself was the most powerful technology. The neural networks developed during the conflict had fundamentally altered human cognitive potential. Children were born with an innate understanding of collective problem-solving that previous generations could never have imagined. The first interstellar communication arrays were coming online, not as weapons, but as bridges of understanding. "We're not conquerors," Maya explained during a global broadcast. "We're explorers. Our strength is not in our ability to destroy, but in our capacity to understand, to adapt, to grow." Diplomatic missions from various galactic civilizations began to arrive. The Silicon Collective, the Quantum Weavers, even remnants of the Centauri Concordance, all came to understand this species that had fundamentally challenged every known concept of technological and social development. Commander Velix looked at Maya, a gesture that was part acknowledgement, part apology, part hope. "What comes next?" she asked. Maya smiled. The smile contained multitudes, the memory of conflict, the promise of exploration, the infinite potential of a species that had learned its greatest strength was its ability to transform. "Everything," she replied. The cosmos listened, and for the first time in millennia, it seemed to smile back.